Hello and welcome back to The Gold Advantage. We are covering the LCS today, and my co-host BMB is back after a long hiatus. He was traveling around the world having the best time of his life, and back just in time for the favorite league of the world, the most popular league, North America, to begin. Obviously a little bit of sarcasm there. Viewership is down. People are commenting on the fact that production value is not great. We had the drama, the delays. There's a lot of stuff here, I think. And I think week one began with a bit of a whimper.
I mean, look, to me, this is indicative, I think, of where esports is at the moment. Like, this has just been, and by the way, not just esports, there's a lot of different, alternative markets that are down. And unfortunately, I think that, not to get too much into the battle between the teams and Riot, like, I do think that esports currently is unsustainable, and the leagues and the game publishers could do more to help. At the same time, like, the game publishers is saying, we've never asked for you to a degree. Like, if you guys want to make a business out of this, no. Look, Riot's different. They did franchising. They did a lot around it. So I'm ignoring a lot of this, right? But look, the reality is, the NA still gets like 4 teams in the Worlds. The idea that they were not going to even have a summer league, it was, I think, always going to be crazy. But right now, esports is in a moment where it's down, and so when things are down, the teams in particular are going to be struggling, and so they're looking for some help.
But I think the teams are struggling. I mean, this is part of a much greater discussion, and I don't want to go too deep into it, but when you buy into franchise league, and like if you buy into the NBA, NFL, or FIFA, Premier League, and then the Premier League turns around to you and goes, hey, we know we promised you the media rights revenue, but actually we're not going to sell the media rights.
Well, so because there's no one buying. So they can't sell media rights. This is I've said this since like 2015 when I started looking into this. Fundamentally, and this is where it was never a good thing to start comparing esports to traditional sports, right? Sure. Because the revenue model is completely screwed. The team's effective only revenue model is selling advertisements, right? Sponsorships. That cannot be 100% of your revenue.
Which makes no sense, because there's also merchandising, there's in-game stuff, and so on.
But there's not enough merchandise opportunities because there's not enough events. There's not enough, like, there's, people buy merchandise to represent their team. Like, the audience is there, but like they're just not going to be repping the stuff as much. There's obviously no ticket revenue. There's no media revenue. Like, Twitch, as great as Twitch is and as great as YouTube is, the fact that they get all of this content for free, and that's just kind of how it started, and that's how it's going to continue to perpetrate.
But that's the problem. So when Riot, when Premier League or NFL or MLB or MLB are saying to the teams, well, tough, the teams have a right to kind of push back. They've lacked monetization. But I think getting back to games, this isn't the economics 101, esports economics, but I think the part of the issue is also just, and you've been a big proponent against bringing back retiring players, boring, all of this, and we've had, I think that some of the best...
leave you. They'll just release a video and leave halfway through the season.
They'll leave you, or they'll come back like double lift and be mediocre.
Right.
But also, you can't build a brand around it. One of the most... RIP to CLG, who is NRG now, but at the same time, CLG became so popular because they brought in this team of misfits. And that made it so much more interesting.
We were fans of them. We loved it. And it didn't matter that they weren't the best. You were rooting for them. Their first bloods. We were rooting for their first bloods.
We were rooting for their first bloods. We were rooting for them. When you're just bringing back all players like Dignitas, does anyone really care about them? I don't think so. And I think this is the problem with Elite. We have week 1 is now over. It's going to be a condensed format because the pause 2 weeks. We have three game days, essentially. And Cloud9 Team Liquid at top. Yes, it sucks that Flyquest is at the bottom, but this is just kicked off, and I'm like, okay, should we just hand the trophy to Cloud9? They just looked like, okay, Team Liquid had if I'm going to be honest here, I think Team Liquid had a really great week. I think Piosik basically gave his best performance we've seen so far.
Yep.
They looked really good. They are the closest contender, but really Cloud9 just handled business. Flyquest going 0-3 is concerning, but the real concern is Vikla. He just looks bad.
Yeah.
Like, he legitimately looks bad. So, what's left? Who are we talking about? Who is contending? Who is really competing?
Again, this is indicative, I think, of just the league at the moment. I don't want to get too caught up in this. Look, I think when the teams in the players, you know, went on strike effectively, they're not going to be practicing a lot. They're just not. And so I don't want to read too much into week one. Yeah, correct. And so I don't want to read too much into week one.
Sure.
Would have been a great chance to basically probably fade a lot of these people. I think week 2, you're going to start to probably see a little bit more return of normalcy. I think you're going to start to see Flyquest. I mean, look, 100 Thieves and not a very strong 100 Thieves. So that's not a great loss. TSM, I think TSM's been on the way up even when we go back to the spring from their very rock bottom. So, you know, 2 splits ago, hard to get much worse. So the only place to go is up, but not a great loss there. And then Golden Guardians, like, this is a team that made it to MSI. So that's a, you know, this is a formidable
they're
team.
Legit.
And they're legit. And so I still want to see. It's hard to have a lot to say about the past week, right? When you're getting back into things. The season, you're kind of returning to normalcy. I think one of the recurring themes for me when I look at the bets is just going to be looking for value. Because right now I think that the state of the league, there, other than Cloud9, not a lot of consistency. But like to your point about Rekkles, like I could see Flyquest coming out and beating Cloud9. Why not?
I mean, for a lot of reasons. I don't know. When you say it like that, it's like I can see anyone coming out and beating anyone. Why not? For very strong reasons. Cloud9 looks put together. The team is playing cohesively. You know, they look like a strong team, and they look like the team that just won the league with the 3-0 finals. Flyquest looks like a complete mess. Rekkles looks awful.
These odds that you're seeing are not in. I think these odds, to be candid, the sports bookmakers are also like, we don't know what to fucking do. And so we're just throwing kind of numbers against the wall.
I kind of feel like it's fair, actually. I think it's not favoring Cloud9 enough, I would say.
That's what I'm saying. Like, how that seems to be great value on Cloud9 then at 1.62.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I don't think there's really any. You know, EG is looking better. I think this is a sad thing. It's like EG looks better on a budget than they did when they had the somewhat super team.
But by the way, that makes complete sense to me. Like, you see this all the time. You start like going into the numbers and you start finding your best players, and you kind of stop. I think it is easy, and this is, you know, the players aren't going to like this, but like it's easy to kind of start spending and trying to outspend people, right? You're seeing what's going on with the rest of the world, and you're like, we need some big names, and we're going to start paying all these guys. But when you kind of like strip away that, you start looking, you know, and I'm sensitive to EG with Danny and all that went on there, but like you start stripping the big numbers away and just looking for the best players coming up through your ranks, and you're like, how do we build a real team as opposed to how do we get a bunch of individuals that are talented and put them on a team? And we've seen this, whether it be the LEC and Vitality, or whether it be, you know, ad nauseum through the LCS, where you put together these super teams and they don't, I mean, do they come in like third, fourth, you know, whatever, second, third, fourth? Of course, because there's just too much talent there to do worse than that, especially when you're playing some of the people in the LCS. But it doesn't necessarily guarantee like success when it comes to not just the domestic league, but like especially when you go to these international events, they still get absolutely smoked because there's no real teamwork there.
There's no teamwork, there's no growth, and there's no discipline, and it's been like and this is part of the greater issue with the LCS. I just think everyone loves an underdog story, and I think there's a big confusion around the idea that you need to support a winning team, like ring chasing. That's not the case at all.
No.
There are a lot of people who support losing teams. In fact, by definition, most teams lose.
Yeah.
So the history here, though, is that you associate with someone that your team is competitive in their bracket, that's trying to beat their rivals, that's trying to build up these storylines that you have of something you're following. And I think there's a lot here that is just being overlooked, and I think, like you said, there's one super team that's brought together, disappoint, and you can only be disappointed so many times. Whereas when you have a team like CLG that comes along, you get excited about it. You get excited about 100 Thieves back in the day. You get excited about 100.
They want a story. They just want to support a story. And
Golden Guardians, people love the Golden Guardians roster. They went to 100 Thieves. People love that 100 Thieves roster, despite them losing and so on. And they had the fan base. I understand why they made changes, but they did build it up. And it's just, but it's gone to a point where you're kind of just shrugging your shoulders and going, well, what is going on here? Week 1 is over.
What do you see for week 2?
It's crazy to me that Flyquest is the only team that is 0-3. It's super embarrassing. They are going to be so hungry. There's no way they're okay with that, and I don't think you shouldn't overlook the fact that they are still one of the better teams.
Yes.
The problem is I don't think the books are overlooking that either, so there's basically no value on them. Things are very skewed to the favorites. So with that in mind, I don't know, like jumping into the bets, do you have many for this week? Is there anything that you think you really want to keep an eye out on?
There's a couple, and again, values where I'm looking. I think Dignitas at 2.9 is ridiculous up against Golden Guardians. Like, again, acknowledging that Golden Guardians is the better team, but Dignitas just came and beat EG. So, like, is this a team that is just, like, absolutely terrible? No.
Well, Golden Guardians went to the finals.
The one that I'm really keened up on is TSM over Immortals. The fact that TSM's
really
at 2.1 versus Immortals at 1.65. I mean, they're treating Immortals like they're Cloud9.
It's literally like the odds actually line up perfectly. So Flyquest is a 2.15, Cloud9's a 1.62. I love that TSM. I think actually TSM as well, with these looking semi-decent.
Totally.
There's a lot more competitiveness there, and I think that, for me, is also why I love EG over 100 Thieves. I just said it. I think EG is looking better almost than they did before. 100 Thieves playing with Nuke Duck as their mid laner. He's subbing in because they don't have a mid laner. He has been a successful mid laner historically, but he's stepped away from the game to coach them. It's rusty. It's really rough. The coordination, how much time they've had to practice. You can get EG at 2.35 over 100 Thieves 1.52. I think that is really actually phenomenal.
Agreed.
I also think TSM over NRG 2.6 over NRG's 1.45. This old CLG team was better than TSM, but actually not that much better if you look back at Spring Split.
Completely agree. I'm going to speak out of both sides of my mouth on this one. I think that this Team Liquid team is finally kind of rounding into form, like 3-0 on the weekend. Very talented. With that said, they're going to lose a game. Whenever I see a team that gets 3.0 odds against anybody or better, like Team Dignitas against Liquid, I'm just going to take a taste on Team Dig in that case, because this Team Liquid team last split, until they keep performing, like if they go 6-0, 7-0, 8-0, I'm not going to keep going up against them. But in that same vein, like, how is TSM 3.1 against Golden Guardians? Like, again, I know this Golden Guardians team is good.
Well, because Golden Guardians was the second best team last split. So I actually think I think you're forgetting that, and I don't love and Dig also won 3 games last split, so I don't feel comfortable betting on them. I don't know that I have enough faith to pre-bet any like those sorts of ones. Day 2, there's no games that I would take. Maybe you take Immortals over 100 Thieves at 2.7. That would be really depend on the draft, though.
I guess for me, said differently, there's no value on the favorites. Like,
no.
Flyquest at 1.28, absolutely not. 100 Thieves at 1.40, absolutely not. Golden Guardians at 1.32, absolutely not. And so, like, in a world where, while the league is down, I still enjoy betting on it, I'm just going to be looking for value. And I'm going to be consulting some of our people in our Discord about, using some of those statistics and seeing maybe where there's some value. But there's no world where the favorites are this much of a favorite. Like,
if you're going for the favorites, you got to take handicap kills. And the odds aren't out for that. You need to look at where the line is on the kill handicap for the favorites if you're going to go for that. When I'm looking at day 3, for example, I can see Immortals at 2.7 beating 100 Thieves. I think there's maybe some value there. The other ones, the problem is like, I don't think Flyquest can continue this terrible gameplay. I think TL is going to continue doing well, and so is Cloud9. So I wouldn't take any of them. I think week 2 is really where we're going to start separating like the wheat from the chaff, and we'll start to get a bit more. We've only seen the 1 week, and I'm a bit hesitant to take prop bets as well there around things. So we'll have to see what happens there. But that's kind of it. There's not much betting here, and there's not much in terms of storylines to say.
Other than the league and the teams are not doing great. That's unfortunately, and we don't want that to be the storyline. We don't want that to be what we're talking about. But like, that's where we're at the moment, and so it's hard to ignore.
That's it, exactly. What's not hard to ignore is the like button and to subscribe. We have been doing well.
We're still doing content. We're still here. We're not going on strike.
No, we're not.
Despite some of the summer vacations.
LEC episode will be coming out shortly, and that about wraps up. I mean, the LEC has been much more entertaining of a league this week. So if you're watching the LCS, maybe watch the LEC. I know a lot of you do. We appreciate you all, and we will see you next week. Bye, everyone.
Toodaloo.